The whispers started the moment Violet Zimmerman stepped off the stagecoach in Tombstone, Arizona, in the summer of 1882. Her second-hand dress dusty from the journey, and her eyes bright with hope that everyone said would be crushed before the month was out. She carried nothing but a carpet bag and a dream that seemed foolish to everyone who heard it. She believed in true love, the kind that poets wrote about and that her grandmother had sworn existed, even though Violet had watched her own mother die bitter and alone after her father abandoned them for the gold fields. The other women at the boarding house, where she found work as a seamstress, laughed behind their hands when she confessed her hope of finding a good man who would see past her poverty and love her for who she was inside. Love, Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house keeper, said with a harsh laugh that first evening as Violet unpacked her few belongings. "Girl, this is Tombstone. Men here want three things: whiskey, cards, and women they do not have to marry. You best forget those romantic notions if you want to survive." The other seamstresses who shared the cramped attic room were no kinder. Martha, a sharp-faced woman of 30 who had been in town for 5 years, shook her head as she mended a torn petticoat. "Every girl who comes here thinks she will be different. They all think some handsome man will ride in and sweep them away to a nice ranch with a white fence. Then reality sets in. You will be lucky to marry a clerk or a shopkeeper who bathes once a month." "I do not expect handsome," Violet said quietly, carefully hanging her mother's shawl on a peg. "I just want someone kind, someone honest, someone who will love me the way I will love him." The laughter that followed made her cheeks burn, but she lifted her chin and refused to let them see her hurt. She had survived her father leaving, survived her mother's death from consumption, survived the hard journey west with the last of her money. She would survive their mockery too. Violet proved to be an excellent seamstress, her tiny, neat stitches earning praise from the wealthy wives who came to the boarding house for alterations and new dresses. She saved every penny she could, dreaming of one day having her own shop, her own home. But more than that, she dreamed of sharing that life with someone who would hold her hand in the evenings and laugh with her over simple joys. The other women never stopped mocking her. When a young miner showed interest in her at church, asking to walk her home, they warned her he only wanted one thing. When she accepted anyway, hoping he might be sincere, he proved them right within 2 weeks, trying to pull her into an alley with whiskey on his breath and anger in his eyes when she refused. She got away with a torn sleeve and a bruised wrist, and the women's laughter followed her for days. "Still believe in your fairy tales?" Martha asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Yes," Violet said, though her voice shook. "I do." 3 months passed, and the mockery became part of her daily existence. When she admitted to Mrs. Henderson that she prayed every night for God to send her someone good, the older woman actually patted her head like she was a simple-minded child. When she confessed to young Sarah, another seamstress, that she sometimes imagined what her wedding day might be like, Sarah repeated it to everyone, and Violet endured a week of exaggerated sighs and false romantic gestures. But Violet kept hoping, kept believing, even as the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly and the dust seemed to work into everything. She attended church every Sunday, helped nurse Mrs. Henderson when she fell ill with fever, and treated everyone with kindness even when they gave her none in return. She told herself that her grandmother had been right, that real love did exist, and that somewhere out there was a man who would prove everyone wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September when Austin Reeves rode into Tombstone, his horse tired, and his own face weathered from weeks on the trail. He was 26 years old, tall and lean with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of summer sky. He had been working cattle drives for 8 years, saving every penny, and he had finally earned enough to buy a small ranch 20 miles outside of town. He needed supplies, maybe a decent meal, and then he would head to his new property to start building the life he had dreamed of, since he was a boy watching his father lose everything to bad luck and worse, whiskey. Austin hitched his horse outside the general store and stretched his back, feeling every mile of the journey in his bones. The town was busy, people moving about their business, and he took a moment to simply stand and realize that this would be his home now. No more sleeping on the ground, no more following cattle across endless plains. He would have land, a house, a future. He stepped into the general store, the cool dimness a relief after the bright sun, and started gathering what he needed. Flour, coffee, beans, dried beef. Nails and rope and lamp oil. The list in his mind was long, built from practical necessity rather than comfort. "You look like you have been on the trail a while," the shopkeeper said, a friendly man named Mr. Peterson who had kind eyes and graying hair. 8 years of cattle drives, Austin replied, his voice rough from disuse. He spent most of his time with cows and horses rather than people. "Just bought the old Morrison place. Going to try my hand at ranching on my own." "The Morrison place? That is good land, just needs work." "You will need a lot of supplies to get that house livable again." Mr. Peterson started tallying up the items. "You might want to stop by the boarding house too. Mrs. Henderson has a seamstress there, Violet Zimmerman, who does excellent work. You will be needing curtains, blankets, things like that." Austin nodded, filing the name away. He paid for his supplies, arranged to pick them up the next morning, and then headed to find a room for the night and a hot meal. As he walked down the dusty street, he passed the boarding house, and through an open window, he heard laughter. Not kind laughter, but the sharp, mean kind that made him think of the boys who had mocked him as a child when his father drank away the family money. "Violet actually thinks someone will fall in love with her," a woman's voice said. "Can you imagine? Poor as dirt, plain as a post, and she is waiting for her prince. Maybe one of the cowboys will take pity on her," another voice replied, followed by more laughter. Austin frowned and kept walking, but something about the cruelty in those voices bothered him. He had been mocked enough in his own life to hate hearing it directed at someone else. Still, it was not his business. He had a ranch to set up and a life to build. That night, he ate at a small restaurant and paid for a room above the saloon. It was noisy, but he had slept through worse. As he lay on the narrow bed, he thought about his plans. Get the house repaired first. Build a better barn. Buy a small herd of cattle to start. Eventually, maybe hire some help. It was a lonely vision, but it was his, earned with sweat and patience. The next morning, after collecting his supplies and loading them onto a borrowed wagon, Austin remembered what Mr. Peterson had said about curtains and blankets. The Morrison house had been empty for 2 years, and while the structure was sound, the inside was bare and dusty. He did need things to make it livable, and he supposed it made sense to start now rather than later. He walked to the boarding house, knocked on the door, and was greeted by a stern-looking woman with iron-gray hair. "Help you?" Mrs. Henderson asked, looking him up and down with an assessing gaze. "I was told you have a seamstress here." "I just bought the Morrison place and need curtains, blankets, that sort of thing." "Violet," Mrs. Henderson called over her shoulder. "Customer." Austin waited, hat in his hands, and then he heard light footsteps on the stairs. A young woman appeared, slim and of average height, with brown hair pulled back in a simple bun and dark eyes that seemed wary. She wore a faded blue dress that had been mended multiple times, and her hands showed the calluses of hard work. "Yes, madam," she said quietly, glancing at Austin and then quickly away, as if afraid to look at him directly. "This gentleman needs household goods. Take his order." Mrs. Henderson disappeared into the back of the house, leaving them standing in the narrow hallway. "I am Austin Reeves," he said, his voice gentle because she looked like a startled deer ready to run. "I just bought a ranch outside of town. The house is pretty bare and I need curtains, blankets, maybe some dish towels. Practical things." "I can do that," Violet said, her voice soft but clear. She had a sweet voice, he noticed, like water over smooth stones. "Would you like to tell me what you need, or would you prefer I come see the house to measure the windows?" "Coming to see it would probably be better," Austin said. "I am not good at measuring. I would probably tell you the wrong sizes." The smallest smile touched her lips, there and gone so quickly he almost missed it. "When would be convenient?" "I am heading out there now with supplies. I will be there all day working. You could come any time that suits you." Violet hesitated, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or caution. "Would your wife mind? I do not want to intrude." "No wife," Austin said. "Just me. But Mrs. Henderson could send someone with you if that would be more proper. I just need to get the house fixed up." "I will ask," Violet said. She glanced toward the back of the house where Mrs. Henderson had gone, then looked back at him. "The Morrison place, you said?" "Yes, the old adobe house with the cottonwood trees near the creek." "I know it. I will try to come this afternoon if I can." "That would be fine. Thank you, miss." Austin nodded and turned to leave, but something made him look back. She was watching him with an expression he could not quite read, something hopeful and frightened at the same time. As he drove the wagon out of town, he found himself thinking about her. Not in the way he usually thought about women, which was rarely and with little interest. Most women he had met wanted things he could not provide, or they looked at him like he was just another rough cowboy not worth their time. But there had been something different about Violet Zimmerman. A quietness, a sadness maybe, and he remembered the mocking voices he had heard through the window and wondered if she was the one they had been laughing about. The Morrison place looked rough in the bright sunlight, but Austin could see its potential. The adobe house had good bones, thick walls that would keep out heat in summer and cold in winter. The roof needed some repair, and the inside was dusty and filled with the remnants of the previous owner's life, but it was solid. The creek ran clear and steady. The cottonwoods provided shade, and there was enough grazing land for a decent herd. He spent the morning hauling out trash and debris, sweeping floors, and assessing what needed immediate attention. The windows were intact, which was good, but they were bare and let in too much light. The fireplace worked, he discovered after cleaning out the chimney. The well was good, the water cold and clean. He was replacing a broken shutter when he heard a horse approaching. He looked up to see Violet riding an old mare, sitting straight-backed despite the horse's plodding gait. She wore the same faded dress and a bonnet that had seen better days, but she rode with a dignity that made him straighten his own shoulders. "Miss Zimmerman," he called, walking to meet her as she dismounted. "I am glad you could come." "Mrs. Henderson said I could use her horse if I was back before supper," Violet explained, tying the mare to the fence. She looked at the house and he saw approval in her eyes. "This is nice. Good land, good water. You chose well. Thank you. The house needs work, but I think it will be comfortable once it is fixed up." He gestured toward the door. "Would you like to see inside?" Violet nodded and followed him in, her eyes adjusting to the dimmer interior. Austin watched as she walked through the main room, the kitchen, the 2 bedrooms, her gaze taking in everything with a practical assessment. She went to each window, estimating sizes, checking how the light fell. "You will want heavy fabric for the bedrooms," she said, her voice more confident now that she was discussing her work. Something to block the early sun. Lighter fabric for the main room and kitchen, to let in light but keep out dust. Cotton would be best, I think. Practical and affordable. That sounds good, and blankets. Wool for winter, cotton for summer. I can make quilts too if you like, though those take longer. She moved to the empty kitchen shelves. Dish towels, kitchen linens. You want tablecloths? I do not know, Austin admitted. I have been eating off tin plates around a campfire for 8 years. I am not sure what a proper house needs. Violet turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time. He met her gaze steadily, and he saw something soften in her expression. Then I will make you a list of what would be useful. You can decide what you want from that. I would appreciate it. They stood there for a moment, the dusty air filled with afternoon light, and Austin felt something shift in his chest. She was not beautiful in the way that turned heads on the street, but there was something about her face that he liked. An honesty, a gentleness, and intelligence in those dark eyes. "Can I ask you something?" Violet said suddenly, then looked like she regretted speaking. "Sure." "Why did you buy this place? Why settle here instead of somewhere else?" Austin considered the question. "I wanted land of my own. I wanted to build something that could not be taken away by bad luck or bad choices. I have been working toward this for a long time, and when I heard about this place being for sale at a price I could afford, it seemed like the right time." He paused. "Why do you ask?" "I just wondered if you had family here or friends. Most people settle where they have connections." "No family," Austin said quietly. "My mother died when I was young. My father died 5 years ago. No siblings. I guess I am looking for a place to call home, somewhere to put down roots." "That must be lonely," Violet said, and there was such understanding in her voice that Austin felt something tighten in his throat. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I figure a person can build a life anywhere if they work hard enough. What about you? Do you have family here?" "No. My mother passed 2 years ago. My father left when I was young. I came here because I heard there was work and because I wanted to start over somewhere new." She looked around the room again. "I think you will be happy here. It has a good feeling. I hope so." Austin smiled at her, a real smile, and was pleased when she smiled back. "How long will it take to make the things I need?" "A few weeks, depending on how much you order. I work in the evenings after my other jobs are done. No hurry. I have plenty of other work to keep me busy." He walked her back outside where the mare stood dozing in the shade. "I appreciate you coming all the way out here." "It was nice to get out of town," Violet said, untying the horse. "It can feel cramped at the boarding house." Austin helped her mount, his hands steady as he held the mare's bridle. "You can come back anytime you need to check measurements or show me fabric choices. I will be here most days." "Thank you, Mr. Reeves." "Austin," he said. "Just Austin. Then you should call me Violet." "Violet." He liked how her name sounded. Simple and pretty. Safe ride back. He watched her ride away, the old mare plodding steadily down the dusty road, and found himself hoping she would come back soon. Then he shook his head at his own foolishness and went back to work. That evening, as Violet sewed by candlelight in the attic room, Martha noticed her unusual quietness and pounced on it like a cat on a mouse. "You went out to the Morrison place today," she said, her tone suggesting scandal. "To see that cowboy who bought it." "He needs curtains and blankets," Violet replied, keeping her eyes on her stitching. "It is work." "He is living out there alone," Sarah chimed in, her eyes wide with false innocence. "Is he handsome? Did he try anything?" "He was perfectly respectful," Violet said firmly. "And whether he is handsome or not has nothing to do with the quality of curtains I will make for him." "Oh, listen to her," Martha laughed. "She is already defending him. Poor Violet, is this your prince? a dusty cowboy with a run-down ranch. I am not defending anyone. I am simply stating facts. Violet kept her voice level, refusing to let them see that their words stung. Because the truth was, she had liked Austin Reeves. She had liked his quiet manner and his honest eyes, and the way he had spoken to her like she was a person worth listening to. But she would never admit that to these women who would only use it to hurt her more. "Just do not get your hopes up," Sarah said with false sweetness. "Men like that, they might be nice at first, but they all want the same thing in the end." Violet did not answer. She focused on her sewing and tried to ignore the whispers and giggles that followed. But later, lying in her narrow bed with moonlight streaming through the bare window, she let herself think about Austin Reeves. She thought about his tall frame and gentle voice, the way he had smiled at her, the loneliness she had recognized in him because it matched her own. She told herself not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. But as she drifted off to sleep, she could not help imagining what it might be like to make curtains for her own home, to have someone to share quiet evenings with, to finally prove everyone wrong about love. The next day, Violet went to the general store to look at fabric. Mr. Peterson showed her what he had in stock, and she carefully selected sturdy cotton in practical colors. Deep blue for the bedrooms, cream for the main room, green for the kitchen. Not fancy, but good quality that would last. "This is for the Reeves place?" Mr. Peterson asked as he measured out the yards. "Yes, he needs quite a lot to get the house set up. He seems like a good man, quiet but steady, the kind who keeps his word." Mr. Peterson wrapped the fabric carefully. "You will do good work for him, I am sure." Violet carried the fabric back to the boarding house, trying to ignore the knowing looks from Martha and Sarah. She spent that evening cutting out curtains, her scissors moving with practiced precision. The work was soothing, letting her mind wander while her hands stayed busy. Over the next 2 weeks, Violet sewed every spare moment she had. She made curtains for all the windows, hemming them carefully and adding simple tie-backs. She made dish towels and kitchen cloths, blankets for the beds, even a tablecloth because she thought every home should have one. She found herself taking extra care with each stitch, wanting everything to be perfect. Austin came into town twice during those weeks, stopping at the boarding house to check on progress and pay an installment on the work. Each time, Violet found herself looking forward to seeing him, to hearing his quiet voice and seeing the approval in his eyes when she showed him what she had finished. "This is fine work," he said, running his hand over a completed quilt. "Better than I expected." "I like to do things well," Violet said simply. "I can see that." He looked at her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. "I appreciate it." The second time he visited, Mrs. Henderson was out, and Martha took the opportunity to corner Austin in the parlor while Violet was upstairs getting more finished pieces to show him. "You should know that Violet has some odd ideas," Martha said, her voice low and confidential. "She thinks she is going to find true love, like something out of a storybook. We have tried to help her see sense, but she clings to these foolish notions." Austin looked at Martha with steady eyes. "I do not see how that is any of my business or yours. I just thought you should know, in case she gets ideas about you. She is sweet enough, but very naive." "Miss Zimmerman has been nothing but professional with me," Austin said, his voice cold. "And if she chooses to believe in love, I would say that shows more courage than sense, maybe, but not foolishness. This world could use more people who still believe in good things." Martha's mouth opened, but before she could respond, Violet came down the stairs with an armful of folded fabric. She looked between them, sensing tension but not understanding its source. "I have the bedroom curtains finished," she said hesitantly, "and 2 of the blankets." "Excellent." Austin stood, his expression warming as he looked at her. "Could you bring them out to the ranch tomorrow? I have the rods up now and would like to see how they look." "I can do that." "Good. Come for lunch if you like. I am not much of a cook, but I can manage beans and cornbread." Violet felt her cheeks warm. "That is kind of you." "It is the least I can do when you are bringing things all the way out." He tipped his hat to her, nodded coolly at Martha, and left. "What did she say to him?" Violet asked, turning to Martha with unusual sharpness in her voice. "I was just trying to protect him from your romantic fantasies," Martha said defensively, "but he was quite rude about it. You had no right." Violet's hands tightened on the fabric she held. "My thoughts and feelings are my own business. If you cannot be kind, at least have the decency to stay out of my life." She walked away before Martha could respond, her heart pounding. She rarely stood up to the other women, but something about Austin defending her, about Martha trying to poison his opinion of her, had sparked a fire she did not know she had. The next day, Violet packed the finished items carefully and rode out to the ranch on Mrs. Henderson's mare. The morning was clear and bright, the Arizona sky that deep blue that seemed to go on forever. As she approached the adobe house, she saw that Austin had been working hard. The yard was cleared, the fence repaired, and there was fresh whitewash on the walls. He came out to meet her, wiping his hands on his pants, and his smile was so genuine that Violet felt warmth spread through her chest. "You brought everything?" "Yes. Where would you like me to start?" They spent the next hour hanging curtains, Austin climbing to reach the high rods while Violet directed him and adjusted the fabric. It was easy, working together, their movements falling into a natural rhythm. When they finished the main room and stepped back to look, Violet felt a surge of satisfaction. The cream curtains softened the stark walls and made the space feel like a home. "It looks good," Austin said quietly. "Really good. Better than I imagined." "Wait until we get the bedrooms done and the blankets on the beds," Violet said, smiling. "Then it will really feel lived in." They moved to the bedrooms, hanging the blue curtains that blocked the bright sunlight and made the rooms cool and peaceful. Violet showed him how she had made the blankets, pointing out the tight stitches and durable fabric. "You put a lot of work into this," Austin observed. "I wanted it to be right." Violet smoothed a wrinkle from the tablecloth she had spread on the kitchen table. "You deserve to have a nice home." "Why do you say that?" She looked up at him, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "Because everyone deserves that. A place that feels safe and comfortable, a place to belong." "Is that what you want, a place to belong?" "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "More than anything." They stood there in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of Violet's careful work, and something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition of shared loneliness and shared hope. "I made lunch like I promised," Austin said finally, breaking the moment. "It is not fancy." "I am sure it is fine." They ate at the kitchen table, the new tablecloth making the simple meal feel almost festive. Austin had made beans and cornbread as promised, and Violet was touched to see he had even made coffee strong and hot. "Tell me about your work," Austin said as they ate. "How did you learn to sew like that?" "My mother taught me. She was a seamstress too, very skilled. She always said that honest work done well was its own reward." Violet smiled at the memory. "I used to watch her for hours when I was little, amazed at how she could take plain fabric and turn it into something beautiful. She would be proud of you." "I hope so. I try to honor her memory by doing good work." Violet took a sip of coffee. "What about you? How did you learn ranching?" "My father had a small ranch when I was young before he lost it. I learned the basics from him, even though he was not always the best teacher." Austin's expression darkened. After he lost everything, I hired on with cattle drives, learned from the trail bosses and other cowboys. It was hard, but I saved every penny I could. That must have taken a lot of discipline. It did, but I knew what I wanted and I was willing to work for it. He looked around his kitchen, his home, and now here I am. Here you are, Violet echoed softly, and it is a good place. You should be proud. I am. He met her eyes. And I am grateful to you for helping make it feel like a home. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Violet found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did around people, especially men. Austin listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and shared his own thoughts without trying to impress or intimidate her. He was just himself, honest and straightforward, and she found that more attractive than any amount of smooth charm would have been. When she finally said she needed to get back to town, Austin walked her to her horse. "Will you come back?" he asked. "Not for work, I mean, just to visit." Violet's heart skipped. "Would you want me to?" "Yes, I would like that very much." "Then yes, I will come back." She rode away with a smile on her face, and this time when she looked back, he was still standing there watching her, one hand raised in farewell. That evening, Violet was quieter than usual, lost in her thoughts. The other women noticed immediately. "Someone looks happy," Sarah said with a sly smile. "Did your cowboy kiss you?" "No," Violet said, but she could not keep the smile from her face. "But you want him to," Martha accused. "Oh, Violet, you are such a fool. He is just being nice because you made him curtains. Once you are done with the work, he will forget all about you." "Maybe," Violet said, surprising them with her calm. "Or maybe he is a good man who likes my company. Either way, it is not your concern." "We are just trying to protect you from getting hurt," Sarah said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I would rather take the risk and get hurt than never try at all," Violet replied. "You all mock me for believing in love, but at least I am brave enough to hope for it." "What are you brave enough to hope for?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, and Violet went back to her sewing, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Over the next few weeks, Violet visited the ranch several times. Sometimes she brought small items she had made, a pillow cover or extra dish towels, but mostly she just came to talk. Austin would stop whatever work he was doing and sit with her on the porch, sharing coffee and conversation. They talked about everything and nothing, their pasts, their dreams, the small observations about life that most people kept to themselves. Violet learned that Austin loved horses and had a gift for training them. He had already bought 3 young Mustangs he planned to break and sell. She learned that he read books when he could get them, preferring adventure stories and history. She learned that he had a quiet sense of humor that caught her by surprise and made her laugh in a way she rarely did. Austin learned that Violet loved music, but had never had the chance to learn an instrument. She learned that she missed the garden her mother had kept and dreamed of having her own someday. He learned that she was braver than she seemed, that beneath her quiet exterior was a core of steel forged by loss and loneliness. They did not talk about feelings or the future. They simply enjoyed each other's company, letting something grow between them naturally, without force or expectation. In town, the mockery continued. The other women watched Violet's frequent trips to the ranch with knowing smiles and cutting comments. "He is just lonely," Martha said. "Once he finds a proper woman, someone with means and connections, you will see how fast he forgets about you." "Let her dream," Sarah said with false sweetness. "It will make reality hurt more, but some people have to learn the hard way." Violet stopped trying to defend herself. She simply let their words wash over her like water, refusing to let them dim the happiness she felt when she was with Austin. Because every time she saw him, every time they talked, she became more certain that what was growing between them was real. She saw it in the way he looked at her, listened to her, made space for her in his life. And she felt it in her own heart, the way her pulse jumped when she saw him, the way her days felt brighter knowing she would see him soon. It was early November when everything changed. Violet had ridden out to the ranch on a Saturday afternoon, bringing a basket of apples she had bought at the market. Austin had mentioned wanting to make apple pie if he ever figured out how to make a decent crust, and she had laughed and offered to teach him. They spent the afternoon in the kitchen, flour dusting their hands and laughter filling the air as Austin proved to be terrible at rolling out dough. It kept tearing and sticking, and finally Violet took over while he prepared the apples, peeling them carefully and cutting them into even slices. "I am better with horses than pie crust," he admitted, watching her work with practiced ease. "Everyone has their talents," Violet said, smiling. "I cannot break a horse, so we are even. I could teach you if you wanted. I would like that." They slid the pie into the oven and went to sit on the porch while it baked, the November afternoon cool and pleasant. The cottonwood trees had turned gold, their leaves rustling in the breeze, and the sky was that clear, endless blue that Violet had come to love about Arizona. "Violet," Austin said, his voice more serious than usual. "I need to tell you something." Her heart jumped, but she kept her voice steady. "All right. I know people in town talk. Mrs. Henderson mentioned that the other women at the boarding house have been saying things about you about us." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to know that I do not care what they say. I care about what I know, and what I know is that you are the kindest, most genuine person I have met in a long time." "Austin, let me finish." He took a breath. "I bought this ranch to build a life. I always thought I would do that alone, that I was better off alone. But then I met you, and I started thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe the life I want is not meant to be lived alone." Violet's eyes stung with sudden tears. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have feelings for you. Real feelings, the kind that keep me awake at night thinking about you, hoping you feel the same way." He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. "I am not good with pretty words, and I do not have much to offer except hard work and a half-fixed ranch. But if you would be willing, I would like to court you properly. I would like to see if what I think is growing between us is as real as it feels." Tears spilled down Violet's cheeks, but she was smiling. "It is real. I feel it too. I have felt it almost from the beginning, but I was afraid to believe it. Everyone said I was foolish for hoping. You are not foolish." Austin wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You are brave, and I want to prove to you and everyone else that love like you believe in does exist." "I already know it exists," Violet whispered, "because I feel it when I am with you." Austin pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Violet rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other as the sun moved across the sky and the scent of baking apple pie filled the air. When Violet returned to the boarding house that evening, her face was radiant. The other women noticed immediately. "What happened?" Martha demanded. "Why do you look like that?" Austin asked to court me, Violet said, unable to keep the joy from her voice. And I said yes. There was a moment of shocked silence, then Sarah laughed. "Court you? Violet, do not be naive. He is lonely and you are convenient. It does not mean anything." "It means something to us," Violet said firmly, "and that is all that matters." "You are going to get your heart broken," Martha said, but there was something in her voice that sounded almost like envy. "Men do not really love women like us. We are too poor, too ordinary." "Maybe some men do not," Violet said softly. "But Austin is not like some men. He is good and honest, and he sees me for who I am. That is more than I ever dared hope for." Over the next few months, Austin courted Violet properly, just as he had promised. He came into town every Sunday to take her to church and walk with her afterward. He brought her small gifts: a book of poetry he had ordered from Tucson, a hair comb carved from wood, wildflowers picked from his land. He took her on picnics by the creek and taught her to ride a better horse than Mrs. Henderson's old mare. Violet bloomed under his attention. The wary look in her eyes faded, replaced by confidence and joy. She laughed more, spoke up more, and gradually stopped caring what the other women thought. Let them mock her dreams. Her dreams were coming true. The people of Tombstone began to notice the couple. Some were happy for them, like Mr. Peterson, who told Austin he was lucky to have found such a good woman. Others were skeptical, waiting for the relationship to fail. But Austin and Violet did not care. They were building something together, and it was nobody's business but their own. In February, on a cool evening with stars bright overhead, Austin took Violet to the spot by the creek where the cottonwood trees grew. He had spread a blanket and lit lanterns that cast a soft glow over everything. "This is beautiful," Violet said, looking around in wonder. "I wanted it to be special." Austin took her hands, and she saw that he was nervous. "Violet, these last few months have been the happiest of my life. You have turned my house into a home and my lonely existence into something worth waking up for every morning. I cannot imagine my future without you in it." He knelt down on one knee, pulling a simple gold band from his pocket. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and let me spend the rest of my life proving that your dreams of love were not foolish at all?" "Yes," Violet said through tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Austin slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her for the first time. It was sweet and gentle and full of promise, and Violet thought her heart might burst from happiness. They married in April of 1883, in a simple ceremony at the church in Tombstone. Violet wore a dress she had sewn herself from beautiful white cotton that Mr. Peterson had ordered special for her. Austin wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his eyes never leaving his bride's face. Mr. Peterson and his wife stood up with them, and a handful of townspeople came to witness the union. Mrs. Henderson attended, looking grudgingly pleased. Martha and Sarah came too, their expressions sour but their presence a concession to the fact that Violet had proven them all wrong. After the ceremony, there was a small celebration at the restaurant. People gave the couple small gifts and good wishes. As Violet stood beside her husband, his hand warm in hers, she felt vindicated. All those people who had mocked her dreams, who had told her love was a fairy tale, had been forced to admit they were wrong. But more than vindication, she felt joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy at having found exactly what she had always believed existed. That night, Austin brought his bride home to the ranch. He carried her over the threshold of the adobe house, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the main room that was now truly their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Reeves," he said softly. "I have never loved hearing anything more than I love hearing you call me that," Violet replied, reaching up to touch his face. They spent their first night as husband and wife wrapped in each other's arms, whispering promises and dreams into the darkness. Violet thought about all the times she had been mocked and hurt, all the times she had doubted herself, and realized that every moment of pain had been worth it to arrive at this place of perfect happiness. The first year of marriage was not easy, but it was good. There was hard work, building up the ranch, tending cattle, maintaining the house and land. There were challenges: a drought that summer that made water scarce, a bout of illness that left Austin weak for weeks, the constant financial pressure of running a ranch. But through it all, they had each other. Violet discovered that she loved ranch life. She planted a garden that flourished under her care, providing vegetables for their table. She learned to help with the horses, discovering she had a gentle touch that the animals responded to. She continued to sew, taking occasional commissions from town but mostly focusing on making their home beautiful and comfortable. Austin proved to be everything Violet had dreamed a husband could be. He was kind and patient, never raising his voice in anger, always treating her with respect. He consulted her on decisions about the ranch, valuing her opinion. He made her laugh with his dry humor and held her close on nights when loneliness for her mother threatened to overwhelm her. They talked for hours in the evenings, sitting on the porch and watching the sun set over their land. They shared their hopes and fears, their memories and dreams. They built a partnership based on trust and genuine affection, and it grew stronger with each passing day. In December of that first year, Violet realized she was pregnant. She told Austin on Christmas morning, watching his face transform with joy and wonder. "A baby," he said, his voice full of awe. "We are going to have a baby in late summer, I think." Violet took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. Austin pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. Thank you for this gift." The pregnancy was not easy. Violet was sick for months, barely able to keep food down. Austin hovered over her anxiously, bringing her whatever she could tolerate and sitting with her when she was too ill to get out of bed. But by spring, the sickness passed, and Violet began to bloom. Her belly grew round, and she would catch Austin staring at her with such love in his eyes that it made her want to cry. They prepared for the baby together. Austin built a cradle from smooth wood, carving it carefully and sanding it until there were no rough edges. Violet sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how small everything was. They turned the smaller bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and hanging curtains that Violet had embroidered with flowers. In late August of 1884, after a long, difficult labor, Violet gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James after Austin's father, hoping the name would represent a new beginning rather than the sad past. Austin held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect. He has your eyes," Violet said, exhausted but happy, watching her husband and son with overwhelming love. James was a good baby, healthy and strong. As he grew, it became clear he had inherited his father's dark hair and blue eyes, and his mother's gentle nature. Austin was a devoted father, taking James everywhere with him once he was old enough, teaching him about horses and cattle and the land they lived on. Violet thrived as a mother. She had feared she might not know what to do, having no mother of her own to guide her, but instinct and love carried her through. She nursed James and sang to him, played with him and taught him his letters as he grew older. She watched him toddle around the ranch, his laughter filling the air, and thought about how empty her life would have been without this family she had found. 2 years later, Violet gave birth to a daughter they named Rose. She had her mother's dark eyes and delicate features, and from the beginning, she was full of spirit and determination. Where James was cautious and thoughtful, Rose was bold and adventurous. The two children were devoted to each other, playing together constantly and defending each other fiercely. The ranch prospered. Austin's hard work and careful management paid off. He built up the herd, trained and sold horses, and gained a reputation as an honest, reliable rancher. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, able to provide for their children and save a little for the future. Violet's sewing skills remained in demand, and she took on projects when she had time, enjoying the extra income and the creative outlet. But her true joy was her family and her home. She had turned the adobe house into a place of warmth and love, where neighbors felt welcome and where her children were growing up secure and happy. In town, the women who had mocked Violet's dreams were forced to acknowledge that she had found exactly what she had always believed in. Some, like Martha, remained bitter and skeptical, but others, like young Sarah, who had since married a shopkeeper in a loveless but practical union, would sometimes look at Violet with wistful eyes, as if wondering what it might be like to have chosen hope over cynicism. Mrs. Henderson, grown old and frail, admitted to Violet one day that she had been wrong. "I thought I was protecting you from disappointment," she said. "But you were braver than I ever was. You believed when the rest of us had stopped believing, and you were rewarded for it." "I do not think of it as a reward," Violet said gently. "I think of it as grace. I was lucky enough to meet the right person at the right time and smart enough to recognize it when I did." The years passed quickly, filled with the rhythm of ranch life and the joy of watching their children grow. James grew tall and strong like his father, with the same quiet competence and gentle strength. Rose remained spirited and bright, learning to ride before she was 5 and helping her mother in the garden with enthusiasm if not always patience. Austin and Violet's love deepened with time. They had weathered droughts and illness, financial worries, and the exhaustion of raising young children. They had disagreed and argued and frustrated each other, as all couples do. But through everything, they remained committed to each other and to the life they were building together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin took Violet back to the spot by the creek where he had proposed. The children were spending the night with the Petersons in town, giving the couple a rare evening alone. 10 years, Austin said, his arm around Violet as they watched the sun set. "It seems like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "I know what you mean," Violet said, leaning into his warmth. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I get to wake up every morning next to you in our home with our children. It is more than I ever dared dream." "You dared to dream it," Austin corrected gently. "That is what made you different. You believed it was possible when everyone told you it was not." "Because my grandmother taught me to believe," Violet said. "She told me that real love existed and I trusted her. I am grateful she did." Austin kissed the top of her head. "Because her wisdom led you to have hope, and your hope led you to me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Violet said quietly, "Do you remember what you told me the day you proposed, that you wanted to prove my dreams of love were not foolish?" "I remember. You have done that. You have given me a life that is better than anything I imagined. You have loved me faithfully and well, and you have shown our children what real love looks like." She turned to face him, her eyes shining. "Thank you for that. Thank you for being the man you are." Austin cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such tenderness that it took her breath away. "You are the one who transformed my life, Violet. Before you, I was just existing, working toward a goal but not really living. You taught me what it means to have a home, a family, a purpose beyond just survival. Every good thing in my life came from meeting you." He kissed her then, and it was as sweet and full of promise as their first kiss had been all those years ago by this same creek. As the years continued to pass, the ranch became even more successful. James, now a teenager, took on more responsibility, working alongside his father with skill and dedication. Rose, bright and quick, helped her mother with the garden and the household, though she also insisted on learning ranch work too, much to her father's amused resignation. In 1896, when James was 12 and Rose was 10, Violet gave birth to another son whom they named Daniel. The older children were delighted with their baby brother, doting on him constantly. Austin, now in his early 40s, was as devoted a father as he had been with the first two, walking the floor with Daniel in the middle of the night and playing with him with endless patience. The turn of the century brought changes to Tombstone and the surrounding area. The wild days were over, replaced by a more settled, civilized existence. The town grew, schools improved, and life became easier in many ways. But the Reeves family remained rooted in their ranch, in the land they loved and the life they had built. Martha, the woman who had been cruelest to Violet in those early days, eventually left Tombstone, bitter and alone. Sarah stayed, growing old in her loveless marriage, sometimes watching the Reeves family at church with something like regret in her eyes. Other women who had mocked Violet came to respect her, seeing in her life the proof that dreams were worth holding on to. On a spring day in 1902, Austin and Violet sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done countless times over the years. James, now 18, was preparing to take over more of the ranch operations. Rose, 16 and beautiful, had several young men courting her, though she claimed she was in no hurry to marry. Daniel, 6 years old, was playing in the yard with the family dog. "You ever think about that first day we met?" Violet asked, her hand in Austin's. "When you came to the boarding house looking for curtains." "I think about it often," Austin admitted. "I think about how close I came to not stopping there at all. What would my life be like if I had not? Empty like mine would have been without you." "We were lucky," Austin said. "Lucky to find each other." "It was not just luck," Violet said firmly. "It was faith. I had faith that love existed and you had the courage to believe me. Together we built something real." Austin smiled at her, the lines around his eyes deepening. They were both older now, graying and weathered by years of hard work and Arizona sun. But when Violet looked at her husband, she saw the same man who had defended her to Martha, who had proposed by the creek, who had held her hand through 3 labors and countless challenges. And she knew he saw the same woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I love you," Austin said simply, "more now than ever." "And I love you," Violet replied. "Thank you for making every dream come true." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, the family came together. James joined his parents on the porch, talking about plans for expanding the herd. Rose brought out lemonade she had made, teasing her brothers and laughing at their responses. Daniel climbed into his mother's lap, tired from play, his head resting against her shoulder. This was the life Violet had dreamed of in those lonely nights at the boarding house, when everyone told her she was a fool. This was the love she had believed in when mockery and disappointment tried to convince her to give up hope. And sitting there surrounded by her family, in the home she and Austin had built together, she knew that every moment of faith had been worth it. The people who had mocked her dreams were wrong, just as she had always believed they were. Love was real. True, deep, lasting love existed, and it was worth believing in, worth hoping for, worth fighting for. Her cowboy had made every dream come true under the western sky, not because he was perfect or because their life was easy, but because they had chosen each other and committed to building something beautiful together. As darkness fell and the stars came out, the family moved inside to the warm kitchen where Violet served dinner at the table, covered with the tablecloth she had made so many years ago. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and affection, and Violet looked around at these people she loved more than life itself and felt complete. In the years that followed, the Reeves family continued to thrive. James married a sweet girl from town and brought her to live on the ranch, building a house nearby and starting his own family. Rose eventually found a young man worthy of her spirit, a teacher who made her laugh and supported her dreams. They settled in Tucson but visited often. Daniel grew up strong and good, following in his father's footsteps and eventually taking over the main ranch when Austin was ready to retire. Austin and Violet lived to see their grandchildren grow, to celebrate 50 years of marriage, to watch their family tree branch and grow. They remained devoted to each other until the very end, never taking for granted the gift they had been given. When Violet was an old woman, sitting in her rocking chair on the porch she loved, watching her grandchildren play in the yard where her own children had once played, she would sometimes think back to that scared young woman who had arrived in Tombstone with nothing but a carpetbag and a dream. She would remember the mockery and the loneliness, and then she would look at Austin sitting beside her, his hand still seeking hers after all these years, and she would smile. She had been right to believe, right to hope, right to hold onto her dreams when everyone else told her to let them go. And she had been blessed to find a man who not only understood those dreams, but dedicated his life to making them come true. It was a love story worth believing in, proof that, under the western sky, miracles could still happen. All it took was courage to hope, faith to believe, and two hearts brave enough to trust that love was real. And for Violet and Austin Reeves, that faith had been rewarded with a lifetime of happiness, a legacy of love that would be passed down through generations, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that their story had proven the cynics wrong. In the end, Violet's dreams of love had not just come true. They had exceeded everything she had imagined, filling her life with richness and joy that even in her most hopeful moments she had not dared to envision. And that, she thought as she squeezed Austin's hand and he squeezed back, was the greatest gift of all. Not just that love existed, but that it could be even better than the dreams.